of the greatest challenges people face living within any society is the subconscious and even genetic level need to fit in. From the time we are children, we are aware at a primal level that in order to be embraced by others, we have to adjust our temperament and behaviors so as not to cause conflict or drive a wedge between us and others. Sadly, there is a fine line between striving to be embraced by others and striving to not be ignored. Quite often, this can make people feel like they're on the precipice of being cast out into the wilderness for being too different to the rest of society. In other words, unique. More often than not, this fear is tied to arbitrary rules set by self-important people who aren't even around anymore to see the ruin in their wake. These people hold their opinion in such high regard that they feel a sense of entitlement to dictate to the world what has value and what does not. They not only claim the existence of a standard for legitimacy, but that they alone know what that standard is. And after tossing this grenade of judgment into the world, they quietly sneak away as everyone around them is left scrambling to fall in line and not be destroyed. But is there such a thing as legitimacy in the creative world? Or is creativity legitimate by nature of its very existence? In the theater world, legitimate theater traditionally describes performances based in dramatic storytelling, which historically was seen as more serious as compared to musical theater or farce, which were seen by high society patrons as little more than distraction for the common folk. In the music world, legit has traditionally been used to describe performances showcasing highly trained skill, such as operatic singing or solo, chamber, and orchestral music, which demonstrates instrumental virtuosity. To be legit, performers had to prove adherence to a very specific, largely Western standard of composition and performance. This self-claimed ideal only served to relegate traditional, folk, and culturally diverse music as an indulgence of the unwashed masses. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines legitimate as conforming to recognized principles or accepted rules and standards. However, the same dictionary defines creative as having the quality of something created rather than imitated, and also managed so as to get around legal or conventional limits. Based on the dictionary definitions alone, the concept of legitimacy is actually antithetical to the very concept of creativity. To confine the act of creation within set borders of rules and regulations might as well be an attempt to assassinate artistic instinct itself. Is this really what being an artist is about? Creating within a predetermined box of what is and what is not worthy of attention? And who gets to determine whether something is or is not worthy of the effort anyway? Jerry Goldsmith is long considered to be one of the greatest film composers of all time. On top of composing such memorable themes as Star Trek: The Motion Picture, later used for the opening credits of Star Trek: The Next Generation, as well as Basic Instinct, Patton, Chinatown, and LA Confidential, Goldsmith received 18 Academy Award nominations, including winning the Oscar for Best Score for The Omen. But even as someone highly regarded in film composition circles, his talents were sometimes seen as wasted on the projects he worked on. Composer Bernard Herrmann, who collaborated with Alfred Hitchcock on such classics as Psycho, North by Northwest, and Vertigo, upon hearing the score for the Kirk Douglas Western Lonely Are the Brave, declared that Goldsmith's melodies were simply too good for such a mediocre film. Perhaps one might take that as a compliment on Goldsmith's talent, but are our efforts ever really wasted when we devote every ounce of our being to something that we feel passionate about? What we pursue as artists is as much an extension of ourselves as any appendage on our body. It is likely the reason that we feel a very real physical pain when others demean or put down those pursuits that we are passionate about. And who are they to judge what is worthy of our attention anyhow? Is it possible that they are simply desperate to hold on to traditions that are important to them, but which they fear are fading into obscurity? Most forms of art that we now hold as priceless were originally seen as nothing more than a passing fad or cheap entertainment. While there is little debate today over the idea that film is a form of art, when it was first invented in the 1880s, film was considered to be more of a technical spectacle or indulgence. It took the better part of 3 decades before the first hints of film being seen as art began to appear, with productions such as F.W. Murnau's 1922 film Nosferatu and Fritz Lang's 1927 epic Metropolis. But it really wasn't until the 1960s and the works of such directors as François Truffaut and Ingmar Bergman that the world truly embraced film as having inherent value to the artistic world. Similarly, jazz music of the 1910s and rock music of the 1950s were seen more as noisy drivel that served no purpose except to give the youth something to dance to. But after Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, and Miles Davis helped the bebop era of jazz to explode in the 1940s, and bands such as the Velvet Underground, Pink Floyd, and Genesis rose to prominence in the ironically named art rock days of the 1960s and 1970s, it became clear that there's little in the creative world that can't be seen as art, given enough influence and the passage of time. Yet sadly, even in artistic forms previously shunned for not being legitimate, unspoken standards are still enforced, either consciously or subconsciously, to divide those who should be taken seriously versus those who should be figuratively kicked to the curb. Musical theater companies often set a requirement that those auditioning must choose a song from a musical, as if demonstrating one's ability to perform is tied to specific song titles. And enough jazz musicians came to hold themselves in such high regard, snubbing anything that deviates from their myopic view of what constitutes music, that the term jazz Nazis was created to describe them. Imagine how many brilliant performers are kneecapped by such arbitrary benchmarks. One could be the most inventive and even skilled performer in the world, but choose the wrong song, and suddenly that gem of a creator is seen as lesser than others, who aren't as dedicated, but can play the art world politics of picking a style that self-nominated rulers are comfortable with. Comfort and familiarity is what takes one from being a person who knows what they like to someone who merely likes what they know. And trying to determine worthiness based on predefined criteria that has nothing to do with whether a creation or performance stands on its own ability to make an impression is the pathway to a creative world that is stale at best and boring at worst. Growth comes not from adhering to tradition and measuring against yardsticks, but in breaking boundaries and seeking innovation. It's the same reason why many tech companies are starting to abandon the concept of 4-year degree requirements in hiring software developers. It is also the same reason why so many successful content creators in the modern age have subverted the credentialism of academia and taken their works directly to the people using the internet. And good for them. I honestly can't remember the last time I read a novel or an article where I couldn't decide whether or not what they wrote impacted me until I looked up the author's academic credentials. Can you? The concept of legitimacy leads to a pretentious belief that there are adequate means to measure creative expression, such that one can divide art into being either worthy or worthless. But art is subjective. As with language, art that doesn't connect with one person could speak volumes to another. And what is seen as a distraction today could very well be the height of creativity tomorrow. Who knows? Perhaps the interactive form of storytelling known as the video game will one day be viewed as the ultimate form of artistic creativity. To those who believe they have earned some position of judgment that places their opinions above all others, I offer you this. No, you're not that important. And no, the people you're maligning are not unworthy. You're simply holding on to an old way of thinking that cannot imagine the realm of possibilities beyond the blinders of self-importance you've chosen to wear. But when you break free of the chains of that illusion called legitimacy, the world of free-thinking creators will be there to welcome you with open arms. And to those artists who have faced the undeserved attacks of critics, unwilling or simply incapable of seeing the potential in something new, remember, there is nothing today referred to as art that wasn't denied that very label at one time or another. Art is not about seeking accolades or being let into some members-only club. Art is about creating, and nothing more. And anyone who thinks that legitimacy is the central narrative of art truly has lost the plot. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you've seen, smash the like button and be sure to click the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. If you enjoyed this video or found that it gave you a new way of looking at yourself, either personally or as an artist, please leave a comment in the comments section below. I learn a great deal from other people's perspectives, and I know that the comments you leave on this video will inspire me with new topics to discuss. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok for more content or to stay up to date. I look forward to you joining me the next time.